Hi everyone. Let's take a look at problem 20-5A, which deals with process costing and equivalent units. Okay, Vista Company manufactures a single product in one department. All direct materials are added at the beginning of the process. Direct labor and overhead are added evenly throughout the process. Vista uses monthly reporting periods for its process cost accounting system. During May, the company completed and transferred 22,200 units of products to finished goods inventory. The beginning goods in inventory consisted of 3,000 units that were 100% complete with respect to direct materials and 40% complete with respect to direct labor and overhead, or conversion costs. The other 19,200 completed units were started during the month. Also, another 2,400 units, that's 100% complete with respect to direct material and 80% complete with respect to conversion cost, are in process at the month end. Okay, after the entry, what does it say? After entries to record direct materials, direct labor, and overhead for May, the company's good in process account appears as what you see in the table below. And we are asked in requirement 1 to compute the equivalent units of production in May for direct material and for direct labor and overhead. So let's get started on that first one, and we'll do it on another sheet. Okay, so now I've moved over to the other sheet, and I've got most of this information lined up for us. Let's just slide this down right here. Okay, so the equivalent units of production for materials. Well, we would start off with the beginning goods in process. Okay, and this is sort of the standard way you apply this. Then you would list the goods started and completed, and then you would consider the ending goods in process. Okay, and when you're done with that, you would have total units. Now let's indent the total units so that we know that that's a total. All right. Well, the beginning goods in process were 3,000 units. Okay, so we can assume we had 3,000, so percent added, why don't we format this as a percentage, is going to be 0, and therefore equivalent units would be the units of production times the percent added, right? And that will be 0. And let's format this in a nice way as well. Okay, goods started and completed. What did the problem say? During May, the company completed and transferred 22,200 units. The beginning goods in process were 3,000 units that were 3,000. Let me state that again. 22,200 units were completed during May and transferred, but the beginning goods in process consisted of 3,000 units that were 100% completed with respect to direct materials and 40% with respect to direct labor. Okay, so what that means is goods started and completed was the 22,200, but we would back off the 3,000 that were 100% completed at the beginning, right? So that gets us to, let me make sure I put the math in right. We need another 0 right there. Okay, 22,200 less the 3,000 from above gets us to 19,200. Okay, we really don't need a decimal point on there. And those represent 100% goods started and completed during the month. Multiply that. Alright, just format that for now. And then what did we have in ending? 2,400 units are in process at month end, 100% for direct material and 80% complete. So we have 2,400 units that are 100% complete with respect to material, and we can multiply that across. Now, once we have that, we simply can do a quick summation. Okay, and we have 21,600 as the equivalent units. Now, let's just format those cells so that we know that that's a subtotal. And we'll do a double accounting one. Okay? Now, once we have that, we then can do the same work for the conversion costs. So let's just start off by copying it and then delete the numbers and figure out the units. Okay, well, the beginning goods in process is still the $3,000 units, and in fact all of these are going to be the same physical units, so these we can copy just like that. Now, percent completed for conversion cost was 60% as stated in the problem. Goods started and completed is always 100% because these reflect those that you started during the current period and completed it. And the ending they told us was 80% in the problem. So we've now completed part 1, which is the equivalent units information, and now we can move on to part 2. Okay, now I'm reading from the requirements on part 2, just to the left of my mouse there. Now we're asked to prepare the department's process cost summary for May. Alright, let's go back, and I've staged some of this work for everyone. Let me slide back up. There's our part 1 up top, and I'll slide down. Okay, to do the process cost summary, first we need to come up with the cost charged to the department, and rather than just list them and total them, I've just dropped them in. Now, all of this information is exactly the same information that was given to you right here in the table, right? There's your 670, I'll talk in thousands here. There's your 678, 1863, and 2812 of direct material, direct labor, and overhead, and the opening balance. If we move over here, there's those same amounts, and then the opening balance. So the total cost to account for are 2812,200, which is exactly what we get from the information provided. Okay, well, the next thing we need to do is come up with the equivalent units of processing cost. Okay, let me slide on down, and maybe we can take some information from up top if we can see it. We'll put it right about here. Okay. Well, we need to know what were the beginning goods in process, and we know from up top that equals the 3,000. Okay, and when the goods started and completed, 19,200. We've done that part, and also the ending goods in process come from that cell. So we account for 24,600 units. Now we need to use the equivalent units that we had from up top. So I'm going to say equal, and then slide up and point to that equivalent units, which was 0 for beginning. Let me slide on down. That went out the screen. All that is doing is referencing the cell F5, which is where we had the beginning equivalent units. Now the goods started and completed come from the 19.2, and the 2400, let me slide down one more, comes from, now I'll slide back up so we can see it, the 2400. Okay, slide back down so you can see where that went. And then for conversion cost, we'll pull from the equivalent units above as well. Oh, and I see we have a formatting issue here. We really don't need the decimal point. So the equivalent units for conversion cost, which is the same as labor and overhead, conversion cost mean labor and overhead, is at 18 units, and then I'll just copy that down, and we come up with 22,920. Okay, now once we have that, the next portion of the schedule is just to come up with the equivalent units per unit. Okay, our total direct material cost from this schedule here is 496,800. Let me drop that in. Our total direct labor costs was 1185600, and overhead cost is the 948,480. Okay, and let's format that appropriately. Now, equivalent units comes from the schedule we just completed, right? So we have equivalent units to use for direct material, is the that cell right there, the 21,600. The conversion cost would come from the 22,920. Oh, and again, I want to format this so that looks right. Okay, and then the overhead also uses the same 22,920. Let me slide down so you can see that. See, so all I've done is referenced from the step above, and that's what's really involved with process costing and equivalent units. You need to calculate some numbers and then use it in the following and subsequent calculations. So we come up with now a total cost per unit. We have to take the total cost and divide it by that number. I think that was just a sum, so I've copied that from somewhere else. Now I'm going to cut and paste and show you that all I'm doing is a division here. But once we get to equivalent units, we are interested, and this is a cost per unit. So let's put this one in dollar signs to 2 decimal points. These ones, let's also format that as dollar signs with no decimal points. Okay? So now we have the various equivalent units. And we can move on to the problem. Let me slide on down. Alright, so the next problem involves assigning the cost to the output of the department. And I've gone ahead and wrote the various sections we need, and now we just need to drop in the number. So first we need to consider the cost from the prior month. Okay, and let's indent all of this a little bit. Okay, cost from the prior month. The equivalent units, there is none. The total cost from the prior month is the 181,320, taken from right there. Okay, then we have direct materials. And these are direct materials that were added. There's no equivalent units associated with there. And actually, for goods in process from the beginning, nothing will go into there. Let me format all of these as a comma with no decimals to start, and we'll change it if we need to. Alright, that's because costs from the prior month that were in beginning work in process were assumed to be 100% complete with regard to direct material. Okay, now with regard to direct labor added, the assumptions change. Okay, with direct labor added, we know we added 1,800 of costs, and I stated that wrong. Okay, I slid up a little bit now. Now with direct labor costs, we would pull the equivalent units from where we calculated them above, and labor and overhead use the same equivalent units of 1,800. Okay, and to be exact, we probably should put in zeros for direct materials added. Okay, I'll go ahead and put a 0 in there. The cost per unit we calculated directly above for direct labor as 51.73. Okay, and to come up with the total cost, we would multiply those units times the cost per unit, and we'll turn that into, we'll round this here. Okay. Then we need to add the overhead applied to the goods in process. Equivalent units is the same 1,800 that we calculated above. Okay. The cost per unit for overhead we calculated was 41.38. From there, again, we just multiply. Okay. Once we have that completed, we can put a little sum, a total here, and say total costs to process. Okay, and that total cost would be the sum of the beginning plus whatever else. We can put a little subtotal right there. Alright, let me slide on up now. Now we need to work on goods started and completed. So we're going to have direct material labor and overhead added. Let me copy from here on down. And then this would be the total cost to process as well. Might make sense to indent that a little bit. Indent that too. Okay.